Okay, so maybe you've been in a relationship dynamic for quite a while, but every time you go to take the next step, it feels like the person hesitates or completely pulls back. Well, have you ever been in a situation where somebody avoids commitment and keeps you in this constant state of relationship limbo? Well, avoidants are known for keeping relationships in this state, neither fully committed nor fully detached, leaving their partners or loved ones feeling confused and frustrated, as well as stuck with the total lack of progress that exists. So, without understanding why this happens, you may find yourself wasting months or years in a relationship that never fully progresses, causing emotional exhaustion and completely unmet expectations. And in today's video, I'm going to explain exactly why avoidants keep people in relationship limbo and how you can actually respond in a way that encourages clarity and progress. So if you're new to this channel, my name is Gibson. I am the founder of the Personal Development School. I'm also a coach, counselor, and author, and I put daily YouTube videos out here to help you learn about the science of attachment, psychology, and the subconscious mind so we can really work through those habitual patterns in a way that truly works. And I hope you subscribe and stick around if you enjoy this video, and I hope you get a lot out of this video today as a whole. So first things first, I'm going to go through 4 major things that actually cause an avoidant to want to keep somebody in a relationship limbo, and then we'll talk at the end about what you can do. The first major thing is the fear of vulnerability. Something that often people don't recognize enough is that avoidant attachment styles are often sourced from childhood emotional neglect. In other words, your avoidant partner as an adult or loved one as an adult is somebody who maybe at 3 years old really yearned for their needs to be met, really sought out for emotional connection because we are wired for that connection with our caregivers. But they grew up in a dynamic or household where either that parent was going through so much that they couldn't properly attune to them, or they didn't know how to be attuned because their parents and their parents also were not in the business of attunement, essentially. And what attunement really means is the ability to check in and be present with a child and understand and empathize with their emotional experience. So, for example, if a child's feeling stressed, attunement means a parent would pick up on that distress and be able to go, oh, my child's not feeling good. Let me move towards them and see what I can do to try to make them feel better. So, not only did a dismissive avoidant usually not grow up in a household that had attunement, but even a step further, a lot of the times, this child was actually shamed for their emotions. So if they were expressing emotions, maybe parents saw it as a nuisance or would be like, hey, stop crying, be quiet, go into the other room and come back, figure it out. And parents may not have meant badly by doing that, but there is actually a really powerful impact on a child because when they're wired for attunement and connection and they're not getting it, they usually adapt to that scenario when it's consistent across time by going, I don't want to feel like this again. I don't want to be vulnerable at all. And I'm actually going to deal with the situation that's in front of me and learn to have some form of control by just shutting down my own vulnerability. And that starts with the relationship to themselves. So, what you'll see as a result is that avoidant attachment styles shut down that ability to be present, to be connected with others because it was first shut down to them. It's almost like they become the breadcrumbers because they were initially breadcrumbs in their own childhood. Now, I'm not making excuses, and I'm definitely not sitting here telling you that you should weaponize your own empathy for the situation against yourself. In fact, it is your job listening, if you are not a secure attachment style, to make sure that you can have compassion for other people, but that compassion has to be equal to the relationship to yourself. And so you have to be able to vet and see, look, I have compassion, I have empathy for what that person went through and how this has created this type of attachment situation. But I also have to be clear about what I need and what my standards are and what I'm looking for in a relationship dynamic and make sure I'm not settling or not being okay with a lack of progress in a relationship over time. So we're going to come back to that part at the end and like specifically what you can do to give you support moving through that. But the first thing in terms of why dismissive avoidants keep relationships in limos because they don't want to feel very vulnerable, and a commitment, a close connection, a lowering of, somebody's walls and letting somebody truly in a romantic relationship absolutely terrifies them. It's like, wow, I'm going to feel really vulnerable. And then I'm going to go back to feeling like I did in childhood where I was vulnerable, and the subconscious stored associations that are there. In other words, the way that the brain was conditioned to think about vulnerability was in childhood when I was vulnerable, I didn't get my needs met. I just felt stuck and hurt, and I don't want to relive that. Number 2 A huge thing that dismissive avoidants struggle with, and I think this again can't be understated, is dismissive avoidants also didn't have modeling in their childhood for how to resolve a conflict. In other words, what you'll see a lot of the time is dismissive avoidance ended up in situations where when there was a conflict, usually everything was just like brushed under the rug. And as a result of it being brushed under the rug, they don't know how to properly have a conversation and say, hey, we're in a conflict. What do you need to feel relief? What's your perspective? Oh, I see where you're coming from. Okay, my turn. Here's what I need to feel relief in this situation and to feel better. And here's what I was experiencing emotionally at the time. Can you also empathize with me? Like there's this lack of actual resolution. And how a dismissive avoidant copes with the lack of actual resolution is they basically look for the perfect partner. Imagine if you sitting here listening right now had no idea how to resolve a conflict. What would you do? You'd probably think that you have to find the perfect partner so there is no conflict, so that you don't have to sweep things under the rug and just feel resentful and frustrated. So, dismissive avoidants have this idealized expectation of the perfect person who they never have to argue with, but that actually comes at the expense of a realistic, of like reality. And the reality is, relationships have arguments, they have disagreements, but how you do them is the difference between secure and insecure attachment in a lot of ways, right? If you are able to move through a disagreement with openness, with transparency, with healthy communication, with seeing each other's perspectives and meeting each other's needs so that there's that resolution that takes place, then you're actually stronger after an argument or disagreement. And it doesn't have to be done with raising your voice or getting really frustrated or shutting down. It can be done with grace. But if you don't know how to do that because you haven't had modeling, you haven't seen it, and it's basically an unknown, then a dismissive avoidant will often keep things in limbo because they're looking for the perfect partner and somebody they never have disagreements with. So they're basically attached to this idealized expectation that isn't even going to come true, causing them to often go from relationship to relationship, kind of sabotaging at the first sign of challenge in a relationship dynamic. Number three, dismissive avoidance, because as children, when they went through this cycle of childhood emotional neglect and learned to deal with that neglect by basically making sure that they distance themselves, have this huge pedestal that they put their own independence and autonomy on. Now, independence and autonomy are great, right? That's actually an important part of secure attachment. But it is not mutually exclusive to also being able to have interdependence, the ability to meet each other's needs. And so dismissive avoidants want to keep things in limbo because they have this one-sided vision, thinking that relationships should never have to force them to compromise their independence and autonomy. But when we look at secure relationships and what the healthy, secure relationship looks like, it's interdependence, not independence. And what interdependence means is I can both rely on myself and meet my own needs and have my own opinions and ideas and do my own thing, but I can also rely on you too. And I can also let you in, and I can also go to you in distress and allow you to come to me. It's not mutually exclusive. It's not one or the other. And so a lot of dismissive avoidance, because they don't know that, because they aren't modeled that, and if they eventually do learn that, it scares them because their independence was the only thing that made them feel a sense of control in their own childhood when they couldn't get their needs met from their caregivers. And so, this idea of giving that up or compromising it is so terrifying. And it's not seen through a realistic perspective. It's not seen through a lens of like, oh, interdependence means I can still have a relationship to myself and have a relationship to you. It feels like any relationship to somebody else could potentially infringe upon this coping mechanism that they hold in such high regard, which is the ability to do their own thing all the time. And so they see it as this fear-based thing instead of a realistic perspective on interdependence. And the fourth major reason avoidant attachment styles stay in limbo, and then I will tell you what you can do that sort of mirrors what a secure attachment style would do in this particular situation. But the last thing is you will often see a dismissive avoidant have this deep underlying fear that once they're in a relationship, they can't leave it. And a lot of dismissive avoidants, because they actually, when they do get into a longer term relationship, derive a lot of their needs around security and comfort from having someone there. A lot of them are like afraid to feel that complete separation and pulling away. And believe it or not, dismissive avoidants often have this really delayed effect in terms of how a breakup affects them, where it may not affect them as immediately, but it really does tend to hurt and sting when it takes place. And so what you'll see as a result is that dismissive avoidant attachment styles are scared to be hurt because they're scared to feel their own feelings because they don't want, right? So much of their personality is built around not feeling. So they're scared. I'm going to get into something. It's eventually going to end and then it's going to hurt. And I don't want to feel that hurt later. So I'm just going to avoid the whole thing to begin with. And it's part of how they make themselves feel safe. But of course, there's tremendous downsides to that. So what do you do if you're in this situation? Well, there's an entire course built around this you can check out fully for free. And what this course allows you to do is first understand your own needs, and secondly, how to communicate them in a way according to each attachment style, so they are most likely to hear you and least likely to take it personally, empowering you to have much more effective communication where you can actually get your needs met. So I will put that link down below fully for free. 14 days. We were opening it up for 14 days to check out everything fully free. And on top of that, within that free trial, there is also you can attend a daily webinar. I'm in there 3 days a week. You can ask me your questions one-to-one in a group setting. And we have daily peer support groups. So there's tons of support you can come in and check out for yourself. Now, what I really advise if you are in the situation where you feel like things are in limbo is number one, set a deadline. Do not tell yourself, oh, yeah, I'm just going to see what happens and wait forever, because that just ends up being wasteful time. So you want to set a deadline, and often that deadline will be set relative to your level of investment in that relationship. So, for example, if you've been dating somebody for 6 weeks, you might like try this out for a week. Or really put 2 weeks of effort in. If you've been dating somebody for 2 years and you have a child together, you might try this out for 6 months to a year, right? Like you might really pour into the relationship for this period of time. So you set a deadline first. And what that deadline represents is how long you are going to put everything into this relationship and do the work on your side of the table. The reason I always promote this as an important thing is doing the work on your side of the table means if you're reprogramming your core wounds, you're learning what your needs are, you're communicating them better, then you're not personalizing other people's behavior as much. And you can get seen and heard better and actually stand up for your needs now that you know what they are and how to effectively communicate them, and the best chance that they're going to get heard. But probably most importantly, it positions you for a win-win. In other words, you do the work and grow, and you become better at relationships. And if it doesn't work out, you also have improved your own self-confidence, and you feel good about like, this is the right choice. I did everything I could within this deadline period of time. And if it didn't work out and the person didn't meet me halfway, then I know that it's time for me to walk away. I know that what I'm seeing is what I'm going to keep getting. And I know that the relationship won't grow. So you get certainty, you get closure, and you get tremendous growth on your end, preparing you for the future. But of course, your best case scenario is you do the work within that deadline period of time and the person jumps on board with you because they see, wow, you're communicating differently and it's landing with me, and I can see and hear you better, and I can understand where you're actually coming from. And so it empowers your growth and that person's growth and the relationship's growth overall. So step one, set a deadline. Step two, pour into the relationship. Really focus on communicating your needs, knowing what your needs are, and self-soothing through meeting your own needs and reprogramming your core wounds. Okay. Those are three really big features that I always push. Those are like three foundational steps to starting to see the needle move. And once you've poured into the relationship for a period of time, you have to actually have the conversation. And the conversation should basically go something like this. Hey, I know we've been seeing each other for quite some time. Progress to me is something really important, and my own time is really important to me. So what I'm curious about is, do you see this moving in a direction where we grow, where there's actual progress and commitment becomes something that we have in the future? Because if so, I'm willing to keep showing up and giving this some time. But if that's not something you see at all, then I have to honor my time and know when it's time to walk away, which may be right now. And so if you have that conversation with somebody and you tell them clearly, this is where I'm coming from, after doing a little bit of that initial work and really pouring in and setting that deadline, you increase the most chances that you are going to have success and get your needs met and see the growth and progress that you want to. But you're also decreasing the chances completely, because you have a deadline, that you'll stick around in the wrong thing forever. So that will allow you, again, to be in a win-win scenario. And that's going to be where you'll start to see the most momentum. So again, if you want to check out all of the personal development school for 14 days, fully for free, check out all of our courses, our daily peer support groups. You can come in and ask me questions on webinars in a one-to-one way within that group setting. All of that is fully available just for a limited time. I'll put the link down below. Thank you so much for watching. I hope you subscribe to this channel. I hope you come back.